trust shatters like fine china when someone you love plots your death. Ma'am, please don't eat that. The young waiter's voice was barely a whisper, his eyes darting nervously between my plate and the kitchen doors. His fingertips trembled against the white tablecloth as he leaned close to my ear, close enough that I could smell the mint on his breath. "Excuse me?" I replied, my hand frozen midway to my fork. Around me, 35 years of colleagues raised their glasses in celebration, their laughter bouncing off the crystal chandeliers of Atlanta's most expensive steakhouse. "Your food." He swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing. "Just don't eat it. Please trust me." Before I could demand an explanation, he straightened and hurried away, disappearing through the swinging kitchen doors like he'd never been there at all. My name is Lorraine Price. After 3.5 decades teaching middle school English, my retirement dinner should have been the crowning moment of my career. I'd spent my life nurturing other people's children, pouring my heart into thousands of young minds. That night was supposed to be about speeches, hugs, and maybe a few happy tears. Not poison, not betrayal, not death. I glanced around the elegant private dining room. My son Anthony sat to my right, beaming with pride, his arm draped lovingly around his wife Yolanda's shoulders. My daughter Clarissa was across from me, radiant in a sequin dress that caught the light, whispering something into her boyfriend Darius's ear that made him smirk. My colleagues filled the rest of the long table, people who had become my second family through decades of shared lunches, curriculum battles, and student successes. The plate before me held roasted chicken with rosemary potatoes and asparagus, my favorite meal that I'd specifically requested. It looked perfect, smelt divine, but the waiter's warning turned my stomach to ice. "Mom, aren't you going to eat that?" Anthony asked, already halfway through his steak. "You said you've been craving this all week." I forced a smile. "Just savoring the moment, honey." What do you do when a stranger tells you your food might harm you? When you're surrounded by everyone you love and trust? Do you cause a scene? Do you risk ruining your own celebration over what might be nothing? I watched as Clarissa laughed too loudly at something Darius said. There was something different about her tonight, a sharpness in her eyes, a tension in her shoulders despite her bright smile. 5 minutes crawled by. I pushed the food around my plate, pretending to eat, while my mind raced. Then it happened. Darius reached across the table, mistaking my untouched plate for his empty one. "You're not eating that. Mind if I—" Before I could stop him, he speared a piece of my chicken and popped it into his mouth. What I didn't know then was that someone at my own table had paid to have me killed. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone close, drop an emoji in the comments. I'm sharing this from Atlanta. Which city are you listening from? Subscribe now, because what happened next shocked even the police investigators. I was born in Savannah, where the Spanish moss hangs like memories from every oak tree. As the eldest of 3 children, responsibility was sewn into my bones before I could even spell the word. "Lorraine, you're the backbone," my daddy would tell me, weathered hands on my small shoulders. "When your mama and I are gone, it'll be you holding this family together." And that's exactly who I became. While my sister Denise chased every wild idea that blew through town, and my brother Raymond basked in being the baby, the one my mama shielded from hard truths, I was the one who stayed steady, the rock, the responsible one who made straight A's and came home on time and said yes ma'am and no sir. By 23, I'd married Charles Price, a man with calloused hands and a gentle smile who ran his own plumbing business. We weren't rich, but we were solid. When Anthony was born, I thought my heart might burst from joy.
3 years later came Clarissa, beautiful and demanding from her first breath. "That one's going to keep you on your toes," the nurses had whispered. They didn't know how right they were. We had 14 good years together before Charles clutched his head at the dinner table one Sunday and crumpled to the floor. A stroke, massive and merciless. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. Just like that, I became both mother and father to a teenage son and a preteen daughter. I kept teaching during the day, graded papers while they slept, and somehow stitched together a life that didn't fall apart, even when I wanted to. "Mom never cries," I once overheard Anthony tell a friend. It wasn't true. I just made sure my tears fell in the shower, where the water could wash away any evidence of weakness. Anthony grew into his father's steadiness. He studied hard, earned a business degree, married Yolanda, a pediatric nurse with a laugh that filled rooms, and built the kind of stable life I'd always prayed for him. Clarissa took a different path. Brilliant but restless, she cycled through 3 colleges and twice as many relationships. She had her father's charm, but none of his patience. Every time she called, I braced myself for what came next. A broken lease, a broken heart, a broken promise. "Mom, I just need to crash with you for a few weeks," she'd said 6 months ago, dragging designer suitcases into my modest home after her 3rd failed relationship. Those weeks stretched into months of slammed doors, late nights, and the scent of expensive perfume masking something else I couldn't quite name. "She's 32, Mom," Anthony had said during one of our Sunday calls. "You can't keep rescuing her." But that's what mothers do, isn't it? We rescue. We forgive. We believe in 2nd, 3rd, and 100th chances. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the changes. How Clarissa's calls grew secretive whenever Darius was mentioned. How she'd suddenly acquired jewelry I knew she couldn't afford on her part-time gallery job. How she asked pointed questions about my retirement insurance policy, just in case anything happens to you, Mom. The week before my retirement dinner, I caught Darius in my home office rifling through my financial papers. When confronted, his explanation was too smooth, too rehearsed. "Just helping Clarissa understand your retirement benefits," he'd said, flashing that smile that never reached his eyes. That same night, I overheard them arguing in fierce whispers on the back porch. "She's not going to just hand it over," Clarissa had hissed. "We need to stick to the plan." When I asked her about it the next morning, she laughed it off. "Just boring money stuff, Mom, nothing for you to worry about." But as a woman who had spent her life reading between the lines of teenage excuses, I felt the weight of something dangerous taking shape beneath her words. I just never imagined how dangerous it would be. Those of you who are parents know that feeling. That instinct when something's not right with your child. Drop an ear emoji if you've ever ignored your gut feeling and later regretted it. Thousands of you have been asking for this story after what I shared last week.
The La Belle Epoque restaurant glowed like a jewel box that Friday evening. Crystal chandeliers spilled golden light onto white tablecloths. The air was perfumed with saffron, butter, and the subtle musk of wealth, a place where even the water glasses rang like bells when touched. Principal Henderson had spared no expense. 35 years deserves the best, he'd insisted, when booking the private dining room that typically hosted senators and visiting celebrities. I arrived early, nervously smoothing my new blue dress, a splurge I'd justified as my retirement gift to myself. The hostess led me to a room where streamers spelled out "Happy Retirement, Mrs. Price," above a table set for 20. My colleagues arrived in groups, bearing gifts wrapped in silver paper and decades of shared history. There was Beatrice from math, who'd started the same year I had. Gregory from science, who danced with me at every faculty Christmas party since 1989. Josephine, the librarian, who'd saved my sanity during the hardest years after Charles died. "I can't believe you're actually leaving us," Josephine whispered, hugging me tight. "The school won't be the same without you." Anthony and Yolanda arrived next, punctual, as always. My son, so much like his father it sometimes hurt to look at him, kissed my cheek
and presented a small wrapped box. "Not until the toast, Mom," he said, winking. "It's special." The room filled with laughter and memories, everyone taking their assigned seats. Only two remained empty as the first wine was poured, Clarissa's and Darius's. 20 minutes late, they made their entrance. Clarissa wore a dress that cost more than my first car, all shimmer and barely there straps. Darius trailed behind her in a tailored suit, his hand possessively at the small of her back. Both wore smiles that seemed rehearsed. "Sorry we're late, Mama," Clarissa announced, loud enough to pause all conversations. Traffic was murder. She air-kissed my cheek, leaving a smear of crimson lipstick and the sharp scent of vodka. Darius merely nodded in my direction before pulling out Clarissa's chair with exaggerated gallantry. I noticed his eyes scanning the table, the room, the gifts, calculating something. Principal Henderson stood to give the first toast, a warm recounting of my years of service. Others followed, each story more touching than the last. When it was Anthony's turn, he spoke of my strength, how I'd held our family together through grief with grace and unflinching courage. Then Clarissa rose, champagne glass in hand, swaying slightly. "To my mother," she began, her voice carrying an edge that made conversation dim. "To woman who always knew best, always had the answers, always," she emphasized with a bitter smile, "kept control." An uncomfortable silence fell across the table. "To 35 years of telling other people what to do. May your retirement be relaxing." The way she said relaxing made it sound like a threat. Anthony cleared his throat loudly. "And may we all enjoy this beautiful meal. Let's eat." The tension broke as servers appeared with the first course, a delicate crab bisque that steamed with promise. I caught Clarissa and Darius exchanging glances as the main courses were described by our primary server, an elegant older woman with a French accent. But it was the younger waiter who caught my attention, the one who hovered near the kitchen door, watching our table with unusual intensity. Several times I noticed him staring directly at my place setting, then conferring urgently with a kitchen staff member. When the main courses arrived, perfectly arranged plates of roasted chicken for me, steak for most others, he was the one who placed my plate before me, his hands visibly shaking. That's when he bent down, his lips nearly brushing my ear, and uttered those words that would change everything. "Ma'am, please don't eat that." If this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat, give this video a thumbs up so others can find it too. Let's meet in the comments. Have you ever had a stranger save you from danger? What happened?
The waiter's warning left me frozen, fork suspended in midair as conversations flowed around me. My mind raced through possibilities. A hair in the food? An undercooked piece of chicken? Or something far worse. I set my silverware down and watched him retreat to the kitchen, his shoulders hunched as if carrying a weight. Around me, everyone devoured their meals, praising the tenderness of the meat, the perfect seasoning. Only my plate remained untouched. "Mom?" Anthony nudged me gently. "Everything okay?" "Just savoring the moment," I lied, my mouth dry. All these wonderful people in one room. But my eyes kept drifting to the kitchen doors. Something wasn't right, and every instinct, honed by decades of reading troubled students, told me this wasn't about food quality. "Excuse me," I said, folding my napkin. "I need to powder my nose." Instead of turning toward the restrooms, I slipped through the swinging kitchen doors. The chaos of a high-end kitchen engulfed me, the sizzle of pans, shouted orders,
the rhythmic chopping of vegetables. Near the dishwashing station stood the young waiter, his back against the wall, eyes widening as he spotted me. I approached him directly, teacher mode fully activated. "Young man, you need to explain yourself, right now." He glanced nervously around before pulling me into a small alcove near the walk-in freezer. "I shouldn't be telling you this," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I could lose my job, but—" He swallowed hard. "I overheard them. In the bathroom." "Overheard who?" "Your daughter and that man she's with. They were arguing about something being added to your food. He was angry that it wasn't done right, and she kept saying it was perfect, that you'd never taste it." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "Are you saying my daughter put something in my food?" He nodded, eyes downcast. "I think so. I heard her say the dosage was right this time, that it would look natural because of your age." His voice dropped even lower, like a heart attack. The kitchen spun around me. I grabbed the edge of a metal shelf to steady myself. "Why would you tell me this? You don't know me." For the first time, he met my eyes directly. "My grandmother raised me after my mom left. You remind me of her. I couldn't just—" He trailed off. "It wasn't right." "Did you see what they put in it?" "No, ma'am. But I saw your daughter slip something to Luis, one of our line cooks. He owed her boyfriend money from gambling. That's all I know." I straightened my spine, summoning the composure that had carried me through a classroom of unruly teenagers for 3 decades. "What's your name?" "Trevor, ma'am." "Well, Trevor, I need you to do something for me. I need you to call the police. Quietly. Tell them there's been an attempted poisoning." His eyes widened. "Are you sure? What if I'm wrong?" "Then I'll look foolish. But if you're right—" The kitchen doors swung open behind us as one of the other servers entered, giving us a curious look. "I should get back," Trevor said. "Thank you," I whispered. "Whatever happens, thank you." I returned to the dining room, my heart hammering against my ribs. The celebration continued, oblivious to the horror unfolding beneath the surface of smiles and small talk. Across the table, Clarissa watched me with newfound intensity, her eyes tracking my movements as I reclaimed my seat. She leaned toward Darius, whispering something that made him frown. "Not hungry, Mom?" she asked, her voice carrying a false sweetness. "You've barely touched your food. It's your favorite." "Just pacing myself," I replied, amazed at how steady my voice sounded. "There's cake coming later." The knowledge set heavy in my chest. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, had tried to poison me? For what? Money? Freedom? Had I been such a terrible mother? I scanned the room, wondering how long it would take for the police to arrive, wondering if I should warn everyone, wondering if I was wrong and this was all some terrible misunderstanding. That's when I saw Darius reach across the table. "Mind if I try some of that chicken?" he asked, not waiting for permission before spearing a piece from my plate. "Looks too good to waste." I opened my mouth to stop him, but the words stuck in my throat. Part of me, God help me, wanted to see what would happen. He popped the morsel into his mouth, chewing appreciatively. "Delicious," he pronounced, reaching for another piece. Clarissa's face drained of color. "Darius, don't!" Too late. He'd already swallowed a second bite, washing it down with a sip of wine. 4 minutes later, he clutched his throat and collapsed. My channel members got the extended version with police interview details you won't believe. Subscribe so you're not caught off guard by my next revelation, because what the police discovered in Clarissa's purse changed
everything.
Darius's face contorted in pain. His wine glass shattered against the hardwood floor as his body jerked backward. He clawed at his throat, eyes bulging in silent terror. "Darius!" Clarissa's voice cracked. "Baby, what's wrong?" The room froze in collective shock. One moment, we were celebrating decades of teaching. The next, a man was fighting for his life between the breadbasket and dessert menu. "He's choking!" someone shouted. "Call 911!" yelled another. But I knew better. This wasn't a piece of food lodged in his throat. This was something far worse. Darius collapsed onto the floor, his body convulsing in violent spasms. Foam bubbled at the corners of his mouth. His fingers scratched against the hardwood floor, leaving trails of desperation. Yolanda leapt from her chair, nursing instincts taking over. "Get him on his side," she commanded, dropping to her knees beside him. "Everyone back." Principal Henderson fumbled with his phone, his hand shaking as he dialed emergency services. "We need an ambulance at La Belle Époque restaurant. A man I don't know what's happening." My colleagues huddled together in horror. Several turned away, unable to watch, but I couldn't move, couldn't look away from the terrible truth playing out before me. Clarissa wailed, her cries echoing against the high ceiling as she flung herself beside Darius. Her carefully applied makeup streaked down her face, her expensive dress pooling around her on the floor. "Do something! Somebody help him!" she screamed, her hands fluttering uselessly over his jerking body. Through it all, I stood perfectly still, a cold certainty settling into my bones. The poison meant for me was killing him instead. My own daughter had tried to murder me, but fate had rearranged the plates on this terrible chessboard. Trevor burst through the kitchen doors, his face ashen. Behind him came 2 police officers arriving with stunning speed. Later, I'd learned he'd called them the moment I'd returned to the dining room. "Ma'am?" One officer approached me, while the other went straight to Darius. "Are you Lorraine Price?" I nodded mutely. "The young man who called said there might have been an attempt to—" He didn't finish because the paramedics rushed in, equipment in hand. They worked with practiced efficiency, attaching monitors, checking vitals, shouting medical terms I didn't understand. But I could read the grim expressions on their faces. "BP's crashing. We're losing him. Pupils fixed and dilated. Cardiac arrest. Starting compressions." Time compressed and expanded in strange ways. The rhythmic sound of CPR, the flash of emergency lights through the windows, the horrible, animal sounds coming from my daughter. I felt Anthony's arm around my shoulder, steadying me. "Mom, what's happening? Did he have allergies?" I couldn't answer him. Couldn't form the words to tell my son that his sister had become something unrecognizable to me. "We need to know what he ingested. Was it medication? Drugs? Alcohol?" A demanding paramedic interrupted. Trevor stepped forward, his voice barely audible. "It might be poison. In the food." The word poison rippled through the room like electricity. Heads turned, whispers erupted. And amid the chaos, Clarissa's keening suddenly stopped. Her head whipped around, eyes finding mine with laser precision. In that moment, something passed between us. A terrible knowledge, an acknowledgement. She knew that I knew. "The chicken," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "He ate chicken from my plate." The paramedic relayed this information into his radio while continuing CPR. But the rhythmic compression slowed, then stopped entirely. Time of death, 8:47 p.m. The words fell like stones into the stunned silence of the room. Clarissa collapsed against Darius's still body, her sobs now theatrical, performative. She draped herself over him, face buried against his chest. The police officer who had spoken to me earlier approached again, joined by his partner. "Miss Price, we need to ask some questions. Your waiter has made some concerning allegations." Behind them, I saw Trevor being interviewed by a third officer who'd just arrived. He pointed in our direction, his expression resolute despite his youth. Then came the moment that confirmed everything. As Clarissa lifted her head from Darius's still body, her clutching hands accidentally dislodged something from inside his suit jacket. A small glass vial rolled across the floor, stopping at the feet of the nearest officer. The officer picked it up, holding it to the light. A clear liquid sloshed inside, just a few drops remaining. "Nobody touch anything else," he announced, voice cutting through the chaos. "This is now a potential crime scene. Your support through Super Thanks helps me keep sharing these difficult truths. Have you ever discovered someone close to you wasn't who you thought they were? The police were about to discover something in my daughter's purse that would leave everyone speechless."
What's going on? Clarissa demanded, suddenly alert despite her tears. She stood shakily, designer dress stained with Darius's sweat and saliva. Why are the police talking to the waiter? Darius needs an ambulance, not police. "Miss Price," the officer said firmly, addressing her, "we need to see your purse." Her face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions, confusion, outrage, fear, before settling on indignation. "My purse? My boyfriend just died, and you care about my purse?" "Your purse? Now?" The female officer who'd just arrived extended her hand. Clarissa's eyes darted to mine, silently pleading. For a moment, I saw my little girl again, the child who'd broken a vase at 7 and begged me not to tell her father. "This is ridiculous," she stammered, clutching her small sequined handbag against her chest. "I'm in shock here. My boyfriend just died." Anthony stepped forward. "Clarissa, just give them the purse." "You too, Anthony? Taking their side against your own sister?" Her voice rose hysterically. "What do you all think happened here?" The officer's patience evaporated. "Ma'am, I won't ask again." Reluctantly, Clarissa handed over the purse. The officer opened it carefully, using a pen to sift through the contents. Her expression remained neutral as she extracted a second vial, identical to the one that had fallen from Darius's pocket. "Can you explain this?" the officer asked. Clarissa's face drained of color. That's not mine. Darius must have put it there. And the one in his jacket. I don't know. Maybe someone planted them. Maybe it was him." She pointed wildly at Trevor, who stood by the kitchen doors. "He's been acting weird all night." Trevor stepped forward. "I saw her give something to Lewis, the line cook. She paid him to put it in her mother's food." "That's a lie!" she shrieked. "I never—" "Miss Price, we're going to need you to come with us to the station. We have some questions about what happened here tonight." Anthony placed himself between his sister and the officers. "There must be some mistake. My sister would never—" His voice faltered as he caught sight of my face. "Mom? What's going on?" I finally found my voice. Trevor warned me not to eat my food. He overheard Clarissa and Darius planning to poison me. The room collectively gasped. "Mom, that's insane," Clarissa cried out. "Why would I want to hurt you? You're my mother." "The life insurance policy, the one you've been asking about for months." Anthony's face crumpled in disbelief. "Clarissa, tell me this isn't true." But Clarissa's denial turned to cold fury. Of course she'd believe a stranger over her own daughter. She always thought the worst of me. Nothing I did was ever good enough. The officers moved forward, handcuffs appearing. "Clarissa Price, you're under arrest for a suspicion of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder." As they recited her rights, Clarissa's face transformed into something I never seen before, a mask of pure hatred directed solely at me. "You think you know everything, don't you, Mother? You have no idea what's really going on. No idea at all." The restaurant emptied quickly after that. My colleagues departed with awkward hugs and shocked expressions. The crime scene technicians arrived, photographing everything, collecting my plate, bagging evidence.
Anthony remained by my side through it all, his arm around my shoulders like a lifeline. Yolanda called her mother to watch their children and returned to sit with us as the police took our statements. "I can't believe this," Anthony kept repeating. "I just can't believe Clarissa would—" His voice trailed off each time, unable to complete the thought. The police questioned us for hours. Had I noticed anything unusual? When had Clarissa started asking about my insurance? Did Darius have financial problems? Each question peeled back another layer of horror. Around midnight, an officer approached with news that made my heart sink further. "We've searched Miss Price's apartment," he said. "We found detailed notes about various poisons, their effects, and how to acquire them. This wasn't a spontaneous act." Anthony dropped his head into his hands. "Oh, God." The officer continued gently. "There's more. We found journals dating back several months outlining multiple plans to harm you, Mrs. Price. It appears tonight wasn't the first attempt." I felt the room tilt slightly. "What do you mean?" "Based on what we've found so far, there may have been at least 2 prior attempts to poison you over the past month. Small doses, not enough to kill, but to make you ill, to make it look natural when the final dose was administered." The memory of my mysterious stomach flu 3 weeks ago suddenly took on a horrifying new dimension. "We'd like you to come to the hospital, get checked out, just to be safe." As we prepared to leave the devastated restaurant, Trevor approached hesitantly. "Mrs. Price, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry about your daughter." The rawness in his young face broke something loose inside me. The tears I'd been holding back all night finally came, hot and unstoppable. "Thank you," I managed through my tears. "You saved my life tonight." My channel members get access to exclusive updates about the trial that followed. What would you do if you were me? Could you forgive a child who tried to murder you? Let me know in the comments.
3 weeks after my retirement dinner, I sat in a sterile conference room at the Atlanta Police Department. The detective across from me, a compassionate woman named Detective Rivera, slid a folder across the table. "Mrs. Price, we've completed our initial investigation. I wanted you to hear what we found directly from me, before the district attorney presents it all at the preliminary hearing tomorrow." Anthony sat beside me, his hand covering mine. He'd barely left my side since that night, moving temporarily into my guest room despite having his own family to care for. "I'm ready," I said, though I wasn't sure if that was true. Detective Rivera opened the folder. Clarissa and Darius Palmer had been planning this for approximately 4 months. Their financial situation was dire. She showed us bank statements, revealing massive gambling debts, maxed out credit cards, and multiple high-interest loans in both their names. Darius had a history we were able to uncover, she continued. He'd been involved in insurance scams before, though never anything this extreme. He operated under different names in Florida and Texas. "Clarissa didn't know?" Anthony asked. The detective's expression answered before her words did. "Your sister was fully aware. In fact, according to text messages we recovered, she was the one who suggested targeting you specifically. They discussed several candidates before settling on you as the most profitable option." My stomach lurched. Candidates? Other people with substantial life insurance policies. You weren't their first choice, but you became their focus when Clarissa discovered the terms of your teacher's pension and life insurance. She turned a page in her file. Your policy pays triple for accidental death, and as a recently retired teacher with an exemplary record, the investigation would likely have been minimal if you died of apparent natural causes. The room seemed to shrink around me. My own daughter had comparison shopped for victims and chosen her mother. The total they stood to gain was $457,000, Detective Rivera said quietly. According to their messages, they planned to use it to pay off their debts and move to Costa Rica. Anthony made a strangled sound beside me. I don't understand. Clarissa grew up in a loving home. How could she? We found evidence of prior attempts. The stomach illness you experienced last month? Laboratory tests of samples from your home confirmed trace amounts of a similar substance to what killed Darius. I remembered how attentive Clarissa was during that illness, insisting on preparing my tea, bringing me soup. Each memory now transformed into something monstrous. There's more, Detective Rivera said reluctantly. We believe Darius was not just a co-conspirator, but a professional manipulator. He had a pattern of finding vulnerable women with access to money. She slid across a series of photos showing Darius with different women over the years, all bearing a striking resemblance to Clarissa, attractive, well-dressed women who looked somehow hungry, somehow desperate. 2 of these women lost family members in accidents. Darius collected as the beneficiary and disappeared. We never had enough evidence to charge him. Until now. So he manipulated my sister? Anthony asked, voice breaking with renewed hope. He forced her into this? Detective Rivera closed the folder gently. Mr. Price, I wish I could tell you that was the case, but the evidence suggests your sister was a willing and enthusiastic participant. In many of their exchanges, she was the one pushing for more aggressive action when Darius suggested patience. She hesitated before adding, "There's one more thing you should know. The line cook who helped them, he told us Clarissa approached him first, weeks ago, not Darius." The detective pushed another document toward me, a printout of text messages between Clarissa and Darius dated 3 days before my retirement dinner. Clarissa, Mom's still not sick enough for hospital. Need to finish this Friday. Darius, risky to rush. Retirement dinner too public. Clarissa, perfect cover. Everyone will think stress plus emotion equals heart attack. No one questions when old teachers die. Darius, if you're sure, no mistakes this time. Clarissa, I've got Luis handled. He needs the money bad. We'll make it look natural. Promise. Old. She had called me old. My vibrant, 32-year-old daughter had reduced me to an expendable old woman who no one would miss. I've aged 10 years in 3 weeks, I whispered. Detective Rivera nodded sympathetically. There's one more thing, Mrs. Price. Something we discovered when searching Clarissa's storage unit. She slid across a final photograph. It showed a book, my family photo album, open to a page with pictures of Charles, my late husband. We found traces of the same poison on the edges of these pages, she said gently. Very small amounts, but enough to make someone sick if they handle the pages regularly. The concentration was highest on your husband's photos. The implication hit me like a physical blow. Charles's stroke. It was so sudden. The doctor said it was unusual for a man his age. We've requested his medical records and are considering exhumation. It's too early to know for certain, but the possibility exists that this isn't the first time my daughter has done this. I finished for her, my voice hollow. The room fell silent. Anthony's hand tightened on mine until both our knuckles turned white. Why? Why would she hurt Dad? She was only 15 when he died. Detective Rivera shook her head. We may never know.
some people are simply wired differently. In her journals, we found entries dating back to her teenage years that show concerning patterns of thought. She wrote extensively about feeling trapped, about wanting a different life than what she saw at home. I remembered Clarissa as a teenager, moody, secretive, often cruel to her friends. I'd attributed it to normal adolescent struggles, to grief over losing her father. Had I been blind? Had the darkness always been there, growing like a shadow within my own home? The district attorney is charging her with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and felony murder for Darius's death. With the evidence we've collected, she's facing significant prison time. As we prepared to leave, Detective Rivera handed me a business card with another name written on the back. This is a therapist who specializes in family trauma and betrayal. You might find it helpful to talk with her. Anthony helped me to my feet. Thank you, Detective. One last thing, she said. The young waiter, Trevor Matthews, he's been asking how you're doing. Said to tell you he hopes you're okay. A small, warm spark in the darkness. A reminder that not everyone in this world was capable of such calculated cruelty. My subscribers already know this wasn't the first family betrayal I've survived. What I discovered at Charles's exhumation will be shared next week. Subscribers get notified first. Would you want to know the truth, even if it destroyed your memories of the past?
6 months after my retirement dinner, a milestone now permanently overshadowed by betrayal, I sat on my porch swing watching autumn leaves dance across my front yard. The world had continued turning despite everything, a fact both comforting and bewildering. Clarissa had accepted a plea deal, 20 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. The evidence against her was overwhelming. In exchange for the reduced sentence, she provided information that helped authorities build cases against others in Darius's network of schemes. I hadn't attended her sentencing. Some wounds are too deep for public display. The medical examiner's report on Charles's exhumed remains had confirmed our worst fears. Traces of the same poison found in my food were detected in his tissue samples. Not enough to kill instantly, but enough to weaken his system, trigger the stroke that took him from us. My 15-year-old daughter had poisoned her father. My 32-year-old daughter had tried to poison me. These two irreconcilable truths now define the story of my family. Anthony struggled the most with this knowledge. I shared a bathroom with her, he told me one evening, voice hollow with disbelief. I trusted her with my children. His trust in humanity had been fractured in ways mine hadn't. Perhaps because I'd spent decades in classrooms, I'd seen the full spectrum of human potential, both brilliant light and disturbing darkness. The hardest lesson was accepting that sometimes there are no satisfying explanations for evil. No childhood trauma had shaped Clarissa into what she became. She'd grown up loved, supported, given every opportunity. The monster had developed within her, despite our love, not because of its absence. One unexpected grace emerged from this nightmare. Trevor Matthews, the young waiter whose courage saved my life. He'd visited me in the hospital during my overnight stay, awkwardly holding a bouquet of daisies. My grandmother loved these. She said they were honest flowers. Over the months that followed, he'd stop by occasionally, first to check on me, later to share news of his acceptance to college, his plans to become a social worker. In him, I found a purpose to continue teaching, mentoring, believing in the goodness that can emerge from difficult circumstances. He'd grown up in foster care, bounced between homes until his grandmother took him in at 12. She saved me, he said simply, taught me to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. His grandmother had passed away just months before that fateful night at the restaurant. Perhaps she'd been watching over both of us. I returned to my school as a volunteer, not ready to fully embrace retirement after all. Working with struggling readers gave my day structure and meaning when everything else had crumbled. The principal welcomed me back with open arms, no questions asked, another kindness I hadn't expected but desperately needed. Forgiveness remains complicated territory. I've forgiven myself for not seeing what was hidden in plain sight. I've forgiven Anthony for his occasional anger, his questions about whether I could have done more to help Clarissa. But forgiveness for Clarissa, that's a journey still unfolding. What I know with certainty is this: gratitude saved me from drowning in bitterness. Gratitude for Trevor's intervention, for Anthony's unwavering support, for colleagues who never treated me like a victim or a curiosity, for the detective who handled my case with dignity. For each morning I wake up, still here, still breathing, still capable of finding joy in small moments. The poison that Clarissa tried to put in my body could have ended my life. The poison of hatred and revenge could still claim my soul if I let it. I choose differently. My story isn't the one I expected to tell in my retirement years. Instead of grandchildren and gardening, I speak of betrayal and resilience, of a dinner that ended one life and transformed many others, of a daughter I lost long before I realized she was gone. But I also speak of courage, the extraordinary courage of an ordinary young man who chose to act when it would have been easier to stay silent, the strength that emerges when everything you thought you knew is shattered. Life offers no guarantees, no promises that those we love will return that love faithfully. All we can do is live with open eyes and an open heart, aware of both the light and shadow within each person we encounter, including ourselves. If my story helps even one person recognize manipulation before it's too late, subscribing is worth it. Share your thoughts below. Was justice really served in my case? From Atlanta, with gratitude for your support, what city are you watching from today?